Have you ever wondered why the pain still lingers, even long after the moment has passed? Why certain words, glances, or silences from the past still echo inside you like they happened yesterday? You try to push it down. You tell yourself to move on. But it keeps resurfacing, quietly, powerfully, at the worst times, reminding you of what hurt you, who hurt you, and how small they made you feel. Maybe you've smiled through pain. Maybe you've laughed while bleeding on the inside. You've kept going, but deep down, something still aches. And if you're honest, you're tired of pretending it doesn't. Because when someone breaks your trust, insults your spirit, or walks away when you needed them most, it leaves a mark. And that mark can turn into a belief. One that whispers you're not enough, that you're not safe, that love always hurts, and people always leave. It convinces you to build walls so high that even you forget what's on the other side. But here's the truth. The pain you carry isn't weakness. It's a signal. A sign that something inside you deserves to be seen, healed, and freed. You're not broken, you've just been wounded, and wounds can heal if you stop hiding them. Most people live trapped in a loop. Something hurt them. They never dealt with it. And now every choice, every relationship, every thought is shaped by a past they never made peace with. But that doesn't have to be your story. You're here because a part of you knows it's time to stop carrying what no longer serves you. It's time to look pain in the eye and say, you don't own me anymore. Because the moment you stop running from your pain, you start reclaiming your power. You start stepping into the version of you that no one can break. This message is not about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about realizing that every time someone tried to dim your light was never the problem. Their blindness was. You were born worthy, you were born whole, and no betrayal, no insult, no silence has the power to erase that truth unless you let it. But you won't anymore, not after this. Because once you understand the strength that lives inside you, pain loses its grip. Fear loses its voice, and doubt loses its place in your heart. So stay with me, because this is your turning point. This is the moment you stop being the victim of your past and start becoming the architect of your future. You're not here to survive another day, you're here to rise. You're here to remember that no matter who hurt you, what broke you, or how long you've been carrying the weight, none of it defines you anymore. And by the time you reach the end of this message, you'll know with absolute certainty that nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. You've been through more than most people will ever know. You've survived moments that could have shattered you, but you didn't let them. You held yourself together when everything around you was falling apart. And even when you felt invisible, like your pain didn't matter, you kept going. But just surviving isn't enough anymore. You weren't made to live in quiet suffering, to shrink your worth just to keep peace with people who never valued it. You weren't born to carry the weight of other people's cruelty like it belongs to you, because it never did. You are not the insults they threw at you. You are not the rejection, the abandonment, the betrayal. You are not the failure someone else projected onto you. Those moments may have felt personal, but they were never about you. They were about broken people who didn't know how to love, how to respect, how to see beauty without trying to possess or destroy it. Their actions were a reflection of their own chaos, not a reflection of your value. And the longer you hold on to their voices, the longer you silence your own. It's time to let that go. All of it. The guilt, the shame, the pressure to prove something. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. You don't need anyone's permission to rise. Your worth isn't up for debate. It never was. When you start believing that, everything changes. You stop giving energy to people who only want to drain you. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop apologizing for protecting your peace, your space, your light. Because the truth is, not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone gets to hold a place in your life just because they had one in your past. When you realize that, you start to take your power back. You start filtering your energy. You start choosing who gets to be near your heart and who no longer does. That's not cold, that's clarity, that's emotional freedom. That's how healing begins, not by fixing the people who hurt you, but by refusing to let them hurt you again. You get to choose now. You get to decide what stays and what goes. And from this point on, you no longer live from a place of fear. You live from a place of strength. Because once you stop seeking validation from the very people who made you feel unworthy, you become unstoppable. You stop chasing love and start becoming it. You stop fearing rejection and start standing in your truth. That's when everything shifts. That's when you realize the pain that once broke you is now the reason you'll never be broken again. You've already survived the worst of it. Now it's time to become the version of you that doesn't just survive, but thrives. The version that walks with unshakable confidence. The version that knows deep in their soul that nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. When you stop giving others the power to define you, you begin to see who you truly are. Not the version shaped by pain or fear or the expectations of others, but the real you, the one who always existed beneath the wounds, the one who was strong even when they felt broken, the one who kept showing up when quitting would have been easier. That version of you isn't just surviving. That version is ready to rise, to lead, to become untouchable, not because nothing hurts anymore, but because nothing controls you anymore. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. You don't need to earn love through suffering. You don't need to stay silent just to be accepted. You were not born to play small so that others can feel big. Every time you dim your truth, you abandon yourself. Every time you ignore your boundaries, you say yes to more pain. But the moment you choose to fully return to yourself, to speak, to stand, to protect your peace, you send a clear message to the world: I am no longer available for harm. Your life is no longer a place for chaos to find shelter. No longer a playground for people who only bring pain. You are now sacred ground. You are now the guardian of your own energy. This isn't ego. This is healing. This is clarity. This is what happens when you finally realize that your heart is worth protecting. Not just from others, but from your old patterns, your old habits, your old way of letting people stay longer than they deserved. Because deep down you always knew your value. You just buried it under years of pleasing, proving, and performing for people who were never capable of seeing it. But now you see it. Now you feel it. You're not the same. You've outgrown the version of you that kept apologizing for having needs. You've evolved past the version of you that settled for half love, half respect, half attention. Now you require full presence, full honesty, full alignment, nothing less. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It begins with one brave decision to stop abandoning yourself for anyone or anything. And when you make that choice, your life begins to rearrange. The wrong people fall away. The right people start appearing. Peace replaces panic. Strength replaces fear. And suddenly you find yourself breathing deeper, standing taller, walking into rooms without shrinking to fit. You are no longer who they hurt. You are who you decided to become in spite of it. That is your power. That is your rebirth. You no longer carry the weight of what others did to you. You carry the wisdom it gave you. And that wisdom becomes your armor. You no longer bleed from old wounds. You lead with healed scars. Scars that remind you not of pain, but of power. The kind of power that no one can take from you. The kind of power that makes it clear nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. Every time you choose yourself, you heal a piece of your past. Every time you say no to disrespect, no to manipulation, no to being treated like an afterthought, you rewrite the rules of your life. You send a message not just to others, but to your own mind, that you are no longer available for pain disguised as love, for chaos disguised as connection, for guilt disguised as loyalty. That is how true freedom begins, not by escaping life, but by rising above the patterns that once held you down. You are allowed to walk away from anything that makes you feel small. You are allowed to outgrow people who never grew with you. You are allowed to build a life so full of peace that anything less feels like a threat to your soul. That isn't selfish, that's survival. That's what healing looks like. It's the slow, steady process of returning to your power, of removing the masks you wore to stay safe, of releasing the lies that said your voice didn't matter, your needs didn't count, or your boundaries were too much. You don't owe your past any more sacrifices. You don't need to keep revisiting the same pain just to prove you're strong enough to endure it. Strength is not found in how much you can take. It's found in how deeply you can choose to let go. Let go of the narratives that were never yours. Let go of the roles you played to be loved. Let go of the fear that if you finally put yourself first, you'll lose everything. Because what you'll lose are the things never meant for you. And what you'll gain is a version of you that finally feels whole. When you reclaim your energy, your focus shifts. You stop being triggered by the same patterns. You stop reacting to every insult, every rejection, every moment of being misunderstood. Instead, you respond with grace, with calm, with strength, because you know who you are. You know what you deserve. You're not interested in being right. You're interested in being free. And that freedom starts with knowing that no matter what others say or do, they no longer get to touch the core of you. The deepest kind of healing doesn't scream. It speaks quietly in how you live. It shows up in the peace you protect, the silence you choose, the standards you refuse to lower. That's real transformation. It's not dramatic. It's deliberate. It's built one choice at a time, one boundary at a time, one moment of self-respect at a time. And eventually you look back and realize you're not triggered, you're not broken, and you're not afraid. You've become untouchable, not because the world changed, but because you did. Now you walk with a different energy. You no longer beg for love. You embody it. You no longer fear abandonment. You trust your own presence. And in that sacred place of wholeness, you finally know the truth. Nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. When you fully understand your worth, the entire world shifts around you. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you stop tolerating what doesn't serve your soul. You no longer seek comfort in places that once destroyed your peace. You no longer confuse attachment with connection. You no longer mistake being needed for being loved. You know now that you are not here to be broken over and over, just to learn how to stand again. You are here to rise and keep rising with no apologies, no hesitation, and no fear of leaving behind the people who cannot meet you where you are going. This is the part where you begin to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. You stop pouring into empty hands. You stop begging for clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. You stop entertaining conversations that only drain your spirit. You don't respond to chaos because you no longer speak the language of pain. You've learned that silence is power, distance is clarity, and boundaries are love. Not just for others, but for yourself. Every time you honor your boundaries, you heal a part of you that used to be silent to keep the peace. Your power doesn't lie in how loud you are, how strong you appear, or how much you can endure. Your power lives in how unshakable your peace becomes when you are no longer at war with yourself. It shows in the way you walk away from what once triggered you. It's in the calm you now carry into every situation. Because once you've rebuilt yourself from the inside out, you don't flinch when people try to tear you down. You've already met your lowest point, and you didn't break. That's why nothing and no one can break you now. You're no longer controlled by fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. You've stared those fears down and realized they were never rooted in truth. They were born from old wounds and false beliefs, and you've outgrown them. You've moved past the version of yourself that accepted crumbs and called it love. You've evolved beyond the version that stayed quiet to avoid conflict. You've awakened to your own power, and you're no longer willing to live below your worth just to be accepted by people who don't value your heart. This is what healing feels like. This is what becoming whole looks like. No more pretending, no more shrinking, no more betraying yourself to keep anyone else comfortable. You've returned to your truth. You've reclaimed your voice. You've rebuilt your foundation. And now, everything that doesn't align with that strength will naturally fall away. Not because you forced it, but because your energy has changed. You are no longer accessible to harm. You are no longer available for pain, because you finally understand deeply, unshakably, that nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. There is a calm that rises inside you when you no longer need anyone to validate your existence. When you no longer look for confirmation that you matter. When you stop waiting for someone else to choose you before you choose yourself. That calm is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the inner knowing that you are enough, with or without applause, with or without approval. You have nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to earn, because who you are is already worthy, already powerful, already complete. And no one can take that from you unless you hand it over. That's how people get hurt. They forget who they are. They forget they are allowed to say no, allowed to change, allowed to walk away from anything that makes them question their value. When you forget your worth, you become vulnerable to anything that looks like love but feels like control, anything that sounds like care but acts like manipulation. You settle for words over action. You explain away red flags. You sacrifice your peace for moments of validation that never last. But the moment you remember who you are, you no longer seek love in places that cost your soul to stay. You become free when you realize that not everyone deserves access to your heart. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you. Some were only lessons. Some were only mirrors. Some were reminders of what you never want to feel again. Let them go. Let them fade. Not from bitterness, but from clarity. Not from anger, but from strength. Because holding on to people who keep wounding you is not loyalty. It's self-abandonment. And you are done betraying yourself for temporary belonging. You are done watering relationships that only leave you thirsty. You do not need to be softer. You need to be stronger in your boundaries. You do not need to explain your healing. You need to protect it. You do not need to be everything to everyone. You need to be everything to yourself. That is the shift. That is the rebirth. When you stop living for how others see you and start living for how you feel when you're alone with your own heart. That's when the peace becomes permanent. That's when you stop being triggered by the same patterns because you've outgrown the people and places where those patterns were born. Now your presence has changed. You walk differently. You speak differently. You no longer hesitate to stand firm. You no longer shrink to keep others comfortable. Your energy says what your voice no longer needs to. It says you're grounded. It says you're not easily moved. It says you've done the inner work, and now you choose yourself every single time. That is the strength they can't touch. That is the power they never saw coming. And from this moment on, nothing and no one will ever reach deep enough to hurt you again. Because you finally see it, feel it, and believe it, you are untouchable. You no longer flinch when the world tries to shake you, because now you know where your center is. You no longer absorb every opinion, every criticism, every passive-aggressive comment, because you've built something stronger within you, an identity not rooted in noise, but in truth. Your peace no longer depends on how others treat you. Your value no longer rises and falls with someone else's mood. You've outgrown the need to be understood by people who never even tried to understand themselves. And that alone makes you unbreakable. You've realized that the most powerful thing you can do is protect your energy like your future depends on it, because it does. You stop explaining your boundaries to people committed to crossing them. You stop seeking kindness from those who only know how to take. You stop hoping that one day they'll wake up and finally treat you right. You no longer wait for closure because you've given it to yourself. You've chosen to move forward, not because they apologized, but because you deserve peace more than you deserve answers. That's what true self-respect feels like. Quiet, clear, certain. Healing doesn't mean you never get hurt again. It means you're no longer controlled by pain. It means when someone disrespects your heart, you don't collapse, you respond with clarity. When something feels off, you trust yourself enough to walk away. No second guessing, no guilt, no dragging yourself back into patterns that once made you feel small just to be loved. Love that requires you to shrink is not love, it's control. And you're done shrinking. You're done fitting into spaces that can't hold your fullness. This version of you is dangerous, not to others, but to everything that tried to keep you powerless. You've reclaimed your voice. You've sharpened your intuition. You've replaced desperation with discernment. Now, you don't chase energy. You attract what aligns. You no longer ask, am I good enough for them? You ask, are they healthy enough for me? Because now you know your time is sacred. Your presence is valuable. Your peace is priceless. You do not give it away lightly. And those who don't honor it lose the privilege of it immediately without apology. You are not heartless for protecting your heart. You are not cold for choosing silence over chaos. You are not selfish for leaving environments that suffocate your spirit. You are simply no longer willing to betray yourself in the name of belonging. That's what makes you unstoppable. Not your perfection, but your decision to never abandon yourself again. You've seen what happens when you hand your worth to others, and you've taken it back, fully, finally. You are no longer who they tried to break. You are who you chose to rebuild. And from this new foundation, you walk forward with clarity, with strength, with unwavering self-love. You've burned the old story. You've written a new one. And in this new story, you are the one in control. You are the one with power. You are the one who gets to say with absolute certainty, nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. It's not about becoming harder. It's about becoming clearer. Clear on what you deserve. Clear on what you will no longer tolerate. Clear on who you are and what you bring to every space you enter. You've spent too long bending just to avoid breaking, but now you understand that real strength doesn't come from staying silent. Real strength is found in the moments you stand your ground, even if your voice trembles. It's found in the decision to protect your peace, even if it means losing people who never valued it in the first place. You've stopped abandoning yourself to be accepted by those who never knew how to hold your truth. You don't explain your intuition anymore. You don't apologize for needing more. You no longer shrink just to be tolerated. You expand even if it makes others uncomfortable. And if they can't handle your growth, they were never meant to go where you're headed. That realization doesn't sting, it sets you free, because your growth is not up for debate. Your healing is not up for negotiation. You've already spent enough time sacrificing your soul to keep others from feeling small. This new energy you carry, it doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't try to convince anyone of your worth. It simply knows, and that knowing becomes your shield. When people try to gaslight you, it doesn't stick. When they try to guilt you, it doesn't move you. When they try to shame you into shrinking, you stay rooted, because you know now, peace isn't found in pleasing everyone. It's found in honoring yourself, no matter who walks away. You're no longer waiting for someone else to come and save you from the past. You are your own rescue. You've stopped asking others to love you in the ways you never learned to love yourself. Now you give yourself the safety, the validation, the gentleness you once searched for in all the wrong places. And from that inner safety, you build a new standard, one where anything that disturbs your peace gets no space in your life. No matter how familiar, no matter how tempting, no matter how long you tolerated it before, this is your evolution. Quiet, powerful, unapologetic. You've outgrown survival mode. You're no longer triggered by the same games, the same patterns, the same empty promises. Your soul is done settling. You've upgraded your identity. And with that upgrade comes a new kind of power. The kind that radiates without noise. The kind that doesn't seek revenge, but radiates peace. The kind that speaks not with words, but with presence. That's what makes you untouchable. You are no longer the one who endures pain in silence. You are the one who transforms it into strength. You are no longer the one who questions your value. You are the one who embodies it. And now with every breath, every step, every boundary, you declare it clearly to the world, nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. Every time you rise after being dismissed, overlooked, or misunderstood, you reinforce a deeper truth. You are not here to be approved of, you are here to be aligned with your purpose, aligned with your peace, aligned with the version of yourself that no longer needs to explain, to justify, or to carry the weight of people who never had the capacity to hold you. You are not responsible for fixing the brokenness in others. You are responsible for freeing yourself from the patterns that once convinced you that you had to. You've spent enough time questioning your own instincts, enough time second-guessing your emotions, enough time wondering if your needs were too much or your standards too high. They weren't. You just kept trying to receive wholeness from those who had no idea how to offer it. You gave chances to people who mistook your softness for weakness, your empathy for permission, your silence for consent. But that season is over now. You don't carry that version of yourself anymore. You've evolved past the space where you tolerated harm in the name of hope. Now you see it clearly. What you allow is what will continue. What you forgive without change becomes your new standard. What you excuse becomes your identity, but not anymore. Now you draw the line. Now you protect the door to your life with conviction. You no longer let pain disguise itself as love. You no longer let chaos wear the mask of connection. You no longer allow words to mean more than actions. You watch people's patterns, not their promises. You listen to how you feel around them, not what they say. That awareness, that shift, is what sets you free. Because awareness is the birthplace of transformation. Once you see clearly, you can't unsee. Once you recognize your own power, you stop tolerating what drains it. And you begin to move differently. You speak differently. You stop being accessible to the things that once destroyed you. It's not that you don't care. It's that you care more about your peace than anyone else's comfort. You don't explain your boundaries anymore. You embody them. Your silence is no longer fear, it's strength. Your distance is no longer avoidance. It's alignment. Your standards are no longer negotiable. They're sacred. You no longer abandon yourself for approval. You no longer shrink for temporary belonging. You no longer say yes out of guilt. Now, everything you do is a declaration of your worth. You speak from your center. You move with intention. You live like someone who finally knows what they deserve and refuses to settle for anything less. This isn't pride. This is protection. This is what it means to finally love yourself so deeply that nothing shallow can reach you. You are not cold, you are clear, you are not bitter, you are healed. And with every choice you make from this place of truth, you affirm the life you were always meant to live, a life where nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. You don't need to raise your voice to raise your power. True power isn't found in how loud you are, it's found in how deeply you know yourself. It's in the quiet confidence that no one can disturb your peace unless you allow it. It's in the stillness that comes when you've stopped trying to be chosen and started choosing yourself. That kind of power doesn't shake when someone walks away. It doesn't crumble when someone doesn't understand you, because it's rooted in something unshakable, self-respect. You've stopped asking for clarity from people who benefit from keeping you confused. You've stopped searching for safety in people who never felt safe within themselves. You've stopped expecting loyalty from those who never honored their own word. And now you see it clearly. Not everyone has the capacity to meet you where you are. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you. And that is not your burden to carry, it's your freedom to claim. Letting go of the wrong people is not loss. It is expansion, it is healing, it is space for what truly serves you. You've broken the cycle. The one that kept you stuck in patterns of proving, pleasing, and pouring into places that only left you empty. The one that taught you to stay quiet, to not need too much, to be easy to love even if it meant being hard on yourself. That cycle ends here. Because now you understand that you were never too much, you were just in spaces that demanded you be less. And now that you know better, you choose better. You choose peace over chaos, wholeness over codependency, truth over comfort. Every time you choose your peace, you send a signal to your mind that you are safe within yourself. And that rewires everything. It changes how you think, how you feel, how you show up. You no longer react to every trigger because you are no longer ruled by survival. You respond from a place of power because you are grounded in self-worth. That is what healing does. It doesn't just make you feel better, it makes you stronger. It makes you wiser. It makes you immune to the things that once broke you. You no longer chase love. You attract alignment. You no longer beg to be seen. You see yourself. You no longer lower your voice to be accepted. You speak with quiet certainty. And the people meant for you, those who are whole, aware, and ready, will feel that frequency. Because they'll recognize it in themselves. You no longer seek to be needed. You choose to be respected. And in that shift, you no longer fear being alone. Because you've met the version of yourself that is complete, powerful, and fully alive in their own presence. This is who you were always meant to be. Not reactive, but rooted. Not desperate, but discerning. Not broken, but built. From this place, you don't just survive, you lead. You don't just heal, you inspire. And you carry within you an unshakable truth. Nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. The moment you stop outsourcing your worth is the moment you take your power back. No one else decides who you are. No one else defines your value. It doesn't matter who overlooked you, underestimated you, or tried to break you. Their opinion never held the truth. Their silence never meant you were unworthy. Their absence never made you less deserving of love. You are not who they failed to see. You are who you choose to become when you see yourself clearly. And now you see it. You feel it. You're done looking outward for the validation that only ever truly comes from within. You've learned that peace is not given, it's claimed, and it's protected through every decision you make. You decide what gets your energy. You decide what enters your space. You decide what is no longer allowed near your heart. Because you understand now that healing is not about forgetting what happened. It's about learning to no longer let it control you. It's about transforming the pain into wisdom, the triggers into awareness, and the wounds into strength. You've stopped waiting for closure from people who never gave you clarity. You've stopped hoping someone else would bring you peace. You brought it to yourself. You've done the work they didn't see. You fought battles they'll never understand. And now you walk differently, not with arrogance, but with certainty, not with coldness, but with clarity. You no longer rush into spaces that feel wrong. You no longer explain your boundaries to people who never respected them. You don't shrink to fit. You expand to breathe. You trust your no. You honor your yes. Because your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. Not everyone deserves to stand beside the version of you that rose from the fire. You are not here to keep proving your worth. You are here to live it, to embody it, to protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. Every time you settle for less, You abandon a part of yourself. And you're done abandoning yourself. You are done trying to earn love. You are done chasing people who never had the capacity to see you. You are no longer moved by fear of being alone because you've discovered the strength in your own presence. You've tasted your own peace. And now nothing less will ever feel right again. The life you're building now is rooted in truth, rooted in freedom, rooted in standards that don't bend for temporary comfort. This is the version of you that doesn't get pulled back into old cycles. This is the version that trusts the process, even in silence. That doesn't panic when things shift because you know every shift is alignment. You are done being available for what wounds, done participating in what drains, done shrinking for people who can't handle your light. From this place, you don't fear what's ahead. You welcome it because you know with unshakable certainty, nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. You've spent enough time handing your power to situations that didn't deserve your energy, enough time being controlled by reactions instead of choosing your responses. Now, every breath you take is a return to self. Every choice you make is a reclaiming of peace. You don't owe your past any more explanations. You don't owe your pain any more pages. The story has shifted. The chapter has changed. You are no longer the person who bends until they break. You are the one who stands, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely, because you've learned that integrity is more important than acceptance. Your clarity isn't a phase, it's a foundation. You don't question yourself like you used to. You don't tolerate confusion as if it were love. You don't chase approval that keeps you small. That version of you, the one who stayed silent, who settled for almost, who accepted less just to feel something, that version is gone. And what remains is something far stronger. Someone who listens to their own voice before anyone else's. Someone who doesn't second-guess their standards just because others don't meet them. You're not difficult. You're precise. You're not guarded. You're selective. You've earned the right to be. The energy you protect now is sacred. It's not up for negotiation. It's not available for chaos. The world may still try to test you, to provoke the old you, to pull you back into reactions you've outgrown. But now you pause. Now you breathe. Now you choose silence when silence is strength. You choose distance when distance is protection. You don't explain peace to people addicted to war. You don't justify growth to those committed to staying the same. You let your evolution speak for itself. And it speaks loudly. Through your actions, your absence, your refusal to lower your standards. You've realized that healing isn't about returning to who you were. It's about becoming someone new. Someone who knows how to protect their space, not because they're afraid, but because they've learned the cost of letting the wrong energy in. You don't wait for red flags anymore. You trust your intuition. You don't hope people will change. You accept them for who they are and decide accordingly. That is maturity. That is power. That is freedom. You no longer carry what isn't yours. You no longer water what refuses to grow. You no longer apologize for knowing your worth. And in this space, life begins to align. The noise fades. The weight lifts. What once hurt now teaches. What once triggered now empowers. You feel the shift deep in your bones. You are not who you used to be. And thank God for that, because this version of you is awake, unshaken, whole. And now you move with a stillness so powerful that nothing outside of you can disturb it. You walk with a grace that commands respect without needing to demand it. You are no longer breakable. You are no longer available for pain disguised as love. Nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. You no longer respond to chaos because you've become rooted in peace. You no longer need to prove anything because your presence speaks volumes. You're not here to compete, to compare, or to convince. You're here to rise, quietly, fully, completely. You've realized that not everyone deserves access to your energy, and not every situation deserves your attention. That's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the wisdom that comes from surviving what was meant to break you, from learning that your energy is currency, and you will no longer spend it where it's not respected. That's not pride. It's protection. That's not coldness. It's clarity. You've walked through enough darkness to finally recognize your own light. You've carried enough weight to understand what lightness truly feels like. And now you guard your inner world like it matters because it does. You no longer wait for life to hand you peace. You create it. You no longer ask for permission to be free. You embody it. This freedom you've claimed isn't loud, but it's undeniable. It shows up in how you no longer react to old triggers, in how you choose boundaries over bitterness, in how you protect your space without explanation, because not everything requires a response. You've stopped chasing closure from people who never gave you honesty. You've stopped revisiting wounds, hoping they'll feel different. You've stopped replaying moments that only drain your soul. That cycle is done. That chapter is over. And now every step you take is toward alignment, toward peace, toward truth. You don't beg for love anymore. You don't bend for acceptance. You stand in your truth even if it makes others uncomfortable. You stand alone if you must, because anything that costs your peace is too expensive. You finally accepted that not all loss is loss, or some things fall away to make space for better. You no longer ignore red flags just to feel less alone. You no longer silence your intuition to make others comfortable. You've learned that self-betrayal is the worst kind of pain, and you refuse to live in that pain any longer. You've chosen you, and that choice will continue to transform everything. Your mind is no longer a battlefield. Your heart is no longer a hostage, and your future is no longer held back by people who couldn't see your worth. You've broken free. And in that freedom, you've found power. The power to choose, to rise, to walk away, to rebuild. Now, you don't just survive, you lead. Not others, yourself. You lead yourself through fear, through doubt, through discomfort, and you keep moving even when it's hard because you finally trust yourself. You trust the process. You trust the timing. You trust that nothing good will ever require you to sacrifice your self-respect. You trust that peace is your birthright and you will not negotiate it again. You don't need to be rescued. You are the rescue. You don't wait for life to love you. You love yourself enough to create a life that no longer tolerates pain. Nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. You're not afraid of being alone anymore because now you understand solitude is not emptiness. It's elevation. It's where your clarity lives. It's where you hear your own voice without interference, and that voice is no longer soft, no longer uncertain. It's steady, direct, certain. You've realized that silence is not a void, it's a sanctuary. You no longer chase noise to distract from yourself. You face yourself fully, and in doing so, you've discovered just how powerful you've always been. That power was never in the approval you tried to earn. It was never in the validation you sought. It was buried in you, waiting to be claimed. The greatest shift happened when you stopped running from your own reflection, when you stopped avoiding the hard conversations with yourself. You got honest, brutally honest. You looked at what needed to change, and instead of waiting for a better time, you became the change. You let go of the versions of you that were built on survival, the versions that tolerated pain just to feel connection, the versions that wore masks just to be liked. You removed them one by one until what was left was real, unfiltered, unapologetic, you. And that version of you is done performing. You don't argue with people who misunderstand your peace. You don't engage with energy that tries to pull you back into who you used to be. You don't feel guilty for protecting what you've built inside. The boundaries you've set are not walls, they're doors, and only those who carry respect, truth, and intention are allowed through. You've chosen quality over quantity, depth over distraction, wholeness over chaos, and that choice has purified your world. It has made space for the right people, the right purpose, the right energy. You no longer feel desperate, you feel discerning. There's no more begging for love that doesn't love you back. There's no more shrinking to keep the peace. You've learned that peace without self-respect isn't peace at all, it's imprisonment. And you refuse to live caged inside your own silence. You speak your truth now, not with anger, but with conviction. You show up for yourself, not with guilt, but with certainty. You rest without shame, you say no without explanation, you choose yourself without hesitation, and in doing so, you've shifted the entire course of your life. Now you move differently, not from fear, but from awareness, not from pain, but from power. You recognize energy faster, you detach quicker, you love deeper, but only where love is safe. You don't carry what isn't yours. You don't hold space for what drains you. You walk with integrity, not for others to admire, but because your soul demands it. You've stopped negotiating your worth. You've stopped proving your value. And because of that, you've stepped into a version of you that is beyond harm. You are no longer fragile. You are fortified. And now, with every breath, you remind the world, nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. The more grounded you become in who you are, the less you need to defend yourself. The truth doesn't scream. It doesn't panic. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply exists. And now you do too, fully, finally, without apology. You're not chasing peace anymore. You are peace. You walk into rooms and feel the shift, Not because you're trying to be noticed, but because your energy is no longer shaped by insecurity. It's shaped by self-awareness. You don't ask others to honor your boundaries. You enforce them with calm conviction. You don't try to fix what's broken in people. You've learned that healing isn't your job unless the wounds are your own. You no longer overextend yourself for temporary comfort. You've let go of the belief that you need to be everything for everyone to be worthy of anything. You are already worthy. Without performance, without sacrifice, without pain, you finally understand that love isn't supposed to feel like endurance. Relationships aren't meant to feel like survival. You're not here to carry others while you crumble. You've drawn the line, and for the first time, you're standing firmly on your side of it, not in bitterness, in self-respect. Not to block others out, but to keep your soul intact. There's a quiet revolution that happens when you stop betraying yourself to belong, when you stop pretending you're okay with less than what you deserve. You no longer sit in rooms that require you to shrink. You no longer entertain energy that feels chaotic just to avoid being alone. You choose stillness over noise. You choose alignment over approval. You no longer react to disrespect because it doesn't touch you anymore. It used to. It used to pierce deeply. But now it passes through you like smoke through open air because you no longer carry anything it can latch onto. Everything about you has shifted. You've gone from people-pleasing to purpose living, from anxious waiting to calm deciding, from desperate seeking to intentional choosing. You've rebuilt your mindset from the inside out, and now what you tolerate reflects what you believe you're worth, and you believe, finally, that you are worthy of peace, of respect, of loyalty, of love that doesn't hurt. You've stopped confusing intensity with intimacy, chaos with connection, control with care. You know the difference now, and you won't go back to pretending you don't. You don't look back for closure anymore. You've created it. You don't search for validation anymore. You live it. Your worth is no longer in question. It's your foundation. You walk differently because your spirit is aligned with truth. You speak differently because your heart no longer carries confusion. And you live differently because you finally remembered who you are. You are not defined by the ones who couldn't see you. You are not shaped by what tried to break you. You are beyond the reach of what once wounded you, because now you know nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. You don't just survive anymore. You command your space. You wake up knowing that your energy is sacred, your peace is non-negotiable, and your life is no longer up for debate. You don't wait for permission to be who you are. You've stripped away every false layer that told you to play small, to be polite while suffering, to tolerate what made you ache just to keep others comfortable. That version of you is gone. You buried it with every boundary you set, with every no you whispered, with every silent moment you chose yourself over chaos. What remains now is a soul that refuses to dim, a presence that no longer asks, but declares. You stop making your worth a reaction to how others treat you. You stop trying to earn what you already are, enough. You don't need to be fixed, changed, or reshaped to be valuable. You are not a project. You are not a puzzle. You are not someone's emotional rehab. You are complete, not because life has been perfect, but because you stood in the fire and did not lose yourself. You've learned that real power is not loud. It's not angry. It's not demanding. Real power is quiet, grounded, unshakable. It doesn't chase, it attracts, it doesn't force, it flows. Now you see things clearly. The masks people wear no longer confuse you. The mixed signals don't hook you. The empty promises don't move you. You've trained your heart to read energy, not words. You don't get swept up in potential. You pay attention to patterns. You no longer try to save others from their choices. You respect your own time too much to beg someone to see your value. If someone cannot meet you with truth, with consistency, with care, you do not wait. You release, not in anger, in love for yourself. This is not pride. This is healing. This is what happens when you finally believe that being alone is not a punishment. It is clarity, it is strength, it is space to breathe without compromise. You've stopped asking what's wrong with you. Now you ask what no longer aligns with you. That shift changed everything. You've gone from self-doubt to self-trust, from self-abandonment to self-protection. And now there's nothing left to prove. Your peace speaks loud enough. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you understand yourself. You don't fear being left because you never leave yourself. You don't fear starting over because you carry wisdom that no one can take from you. Your past does not haunt you. It shaped you, but it no longer owns you. You've cut the cords to what once drained you. You've shut the doors that kept you small. And now you stand with a kind of power that isn't borrowed. It's built, brick by brick, choice by choice, moment by moment. This is your era of protection, of truth, of radical self-respect. And from here on out, nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. There is a moment when everything shifts, not because the world around you changes, but because your inner world no longer allows the same cycles to repeat. You stop tolerating the pain you once called normal. You stop carrying wounds as badges of loyalty. You stop letting your history decide your future. And suddenly, the things that used to break you no longer even reach you. You become untouchable, not because you're hardened, but because you are healed. You've built an emotional firewall made of truth, self-respect, and clarity. What used to pierce through your soul now dissolves at the surface. You don't flinch at disrespect anymore. You walk away from it. You don't shrink when someone doubts your value. You stand taller. You no longer chase validation. You give it to yourself. This is the power of being rooted. You are no longer pulled by external storms because you've anchored yourself deep within. Your worth doesn't rise and fall with someone else's opinion. Your peace doesn't crumble under chaos. You've created a home inside yourself so solid, so sacred that no one can invade it without your permission. You've learned to breathe through pressure, to hold space for your emotions without letting them control you, to pause before reacting so you can respond with intention. That's real strength. That's how you know you've won, not by avoiding conflict, but by mastering your own energy no matter what enters your space. You no longer live in defense mode. You don't waste energy preparing for hurt. You live open, but not exposed. You love deeply, but not recklessly. You trust yourself so completely that even betrayal cannot shake your foundation. If someone leaves, lies, or harms, you feel it, but you don't fall. You process the pain without letting it define you. You let it move through you, not live inside you. That's the difference between survival and freedom. Survival is constantly looking over your shoulder. Freedom is walking forward, knowing you can handle whatever comes. You've trained your nervous system to feel safe even when life is uncertain. You've replaced anxiety with awareness, overthinking with presence, self-doubt with inner dialogue that uplifts instead of destroys. You speak to yourself like someone who deserves care, because you do. You've stopped bullying yourself for the past. You've forgiven the parts of you that didn't know better. You've embraced the version of you that had to fight just to make it here. And now, you're not just surviving. You are thriving in silence, in solitude, in strength. You are no longer a victim of your past. You are the author of your future. No one else writes this chapter. No one else holds the pen. The power is in your hands, and you use it wisely. You protect your peace without apology. You choose alignment over attachment. You live with eyes wide open, heart fully awake, and boundaries sharp as steel. And because of that, nobody and nothing will ever hurt you again. Not because the world is kinder, but because you are stronger.